A little bit about myself. I've been in the game design field since '95. I've been everything from level designer up through creative director, now founder of a company, executive producer, sort of all over the industry. And in June of last year, my company shut down its California office, and so I did the usual, put out my resume, started interviewing, and 3 of the people with whom I interviewed came back to me and said, "We love your skill set, but we don't need another, creative director, ... And so they came back to me with the idea to do the work they needed on a contract basis, and thus launched about 14 months of working and making a living in the Bay Area as a game design contractor. I made a lot of mistakes and stepped on landmines, and I'm going to show them to you and hopefully find you guys the way around them. So that's where I'm coming from with this. Okay, so again, in terms of housekeeping, I'm going to talk a little bit about contract issues in general, how to be a contractor, but I'm going to spend most of my time on the stuff that is specific to being game design contractor, because we do have things that are unique to what we do in terms of a freelancer, I believe. Do go ahead and ask questions at any time. I may have to write it down and get to it at the end if it's a little bit longer, or I can come talk to you afterwards, just again because of the time. And again, the information is online, and I will be happy to talk to anyone afterwards if you want to go a little bit deeper into any topic. So first, if you just graduated, you just got fired, or you just got fed up, congratulations. You can make a living as a game designer. A contract game designer. That's my premise. The question is, should you? And so I come up with this quick litmus test based on both my experience and the other folks that I saw trying to do this, and what worked and what didn't. And there were some characteristics that I found, were important to have. First, you need to be able to put it down. I was just talking in the lobby with some folks who have done this already. At 8 o'clock at night, when you have already worked on your website and you've done the client's work and you printed your business cards and all that stuff, you're going to want to do more, and you need to be able to put it down. And that kind of goes for any contracting, but test yourself. Ask yourself, are you going to be able to put that pressure down? Second, and this really bit me in the behind a few times, you need to get the job done. You're the only one that's going to get the job done. And if you don't get the job done, you don't get paid. So when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm debugging a memory issue in Xcode, there's no lead engineer down the hall, and it's my paycheck if I don't get it done. And so you got to know just how deep you can go in terms of getting things done. You do have the whole internet, so I mean, it's not impossible. But that really snuck up on me when I was hitting that desperation point. So just fair warning. And third, this is truly specific to game design. People are going to tell you your stuff sucks all the time. You've probably already experienced that, right? Okay, so I'm striking a chord. That's awesome. Okay, but I have good news on that topic, okay? And so I've put cheat codes on all of these slides, which are meant to be sort of non-obvious things or things that had a huge benefit for me. And so the first cheat code is, your job is not to have only awesome ideas and every single awesome idea on the project. Your job is to integrate the good ideas into a consistent vision. And if you've been a game designer for any length of time, you kind of already know that. But the good news is, as a contractor, listen to the difference between, so if I'm on a contract and I go up to the creative director and say, Joe from QA had this awesome idea. That one hallway that's kind of boring? He thought about monsters that shoot lava out of their eyes. Okay, I didn't have to have that idea, but I can tell him why it works in that particular hallway, and that's really my job. So the good news is you don't have to do all the heavy lifting. Another bonus cheat code, this was advice that was given to me when I was first starting out, just get your first gig. Because the way to become a contract game designer is to be a contract game designer. So I'm going to talk a lot about how to negotiate and get your best deal and stuff like that, but the bottom line is you need to get that first one because it leads to your second one, and also you learn a tremendous amount by just doing it. So you may have to take a little bit of a hit on the first one. Yes?
Are you going to talk about where to look?
Yes. Yes. Okay, so now you think that you're ready to go. You've asked the should questions, and you think, yeah, I could do this. I want to do this. So to get ready, you need some things in place before you should consider opening up shop. First is you need a support network. I recommend that you get an S corporation for tax purposes and for some other sort of soft purposes, like if you want to make an app and put it in iTunes, if you don't get a corporation, it will show up as, Aaron Cammarata published this. If you get a corporation, you get to put your cool company name on it. You can also get free software from Microsoft and things like that. You also will need a lawyer. There are some here already. Yes, there you go. Find the good man over there. You want to be able to pick up the phone and ask him questions at a moment's notice. He needs to review, or she, of course, needs to review all of your contracts before you sign them, etc. And you're going to need an accountant. On the IT side, you are the IT department. Of course, you need a computer, you need your software, but you also need not only a printer, but a scanner and fax, because you need to print out and send back those contracts for all that money that you're going to make. And you need version control. So get yourself a Subversion or a Git repository. Dropbox is not version control, okay? But you will need Dropbox so that you can share your final product, okay? So don't overlook those. And then, of course, a really big one, you need financial clarity. You need to figure out what your monthly costs are. So quick rule of thumb, take your annual salary and divide it by 1,000, and that's your hourly rate. So if you're making 75 grand a year at EA as a designer and you want to make it as a contractor, you need to charge about $75 an hour to make up for your savings for the lean times, your benefits, taxes, and so on. Ideally, you want to go above that, but that's a good place to start. And of course, you can look at your pay stub to see, really what the number is. But yes.
So if you already have benefits handled, do you still include those in the salary when you?
No, you can tweak that down. So if the question was if you already have benefits through some other mechanism. I had to use Cobra, so I had to pay them. But if you have them and that's not an expense of yours, certainly on a case by case, you can tweak your own numbers. Yeah. And then you're getting ready to paint your shingle. So you've got all of your infrastructure in place, your network support and so on. Now, and shingle to me is how you're going to put the word out, right? Your website, your business cards, and so on. So the cheat code here is you're going to go through a lot of pain and effort to get yourself your message ready and all your information. So once you've done that work, do it again and present the same information in a second way. So I made a resume when I went out, and I made the one on the left, which I thought was cool and showed I'm this hip designer guy and I know Photoshop, but I couldn't afford it, so I used GIMP to make that. And I thought that got me a little respect, But then I found out that like half the people I was applying to never saw it because the hiring guys in HR just want to see that work history version. So I did a new one, and all of a sudden I had 3 times as many opportunities. So think about who is going to be viewing your website, your business card, and so on, and consider maybe making a second or even third version of it. Okay. You're ready to go, you've got your network in place. This is the day, launch is the day when you say, I am officially a game designer. I am open for business. And this is to the question of how do I find those jobs? It's very easy. Networking is king. And who here considers themselves a top-notch networker? Top 10%, okay. No, so there you go. It was two, and now it's one hand went up. Every hand should be up. You're doing it right now, okay? Networking is listening to other people, it's talking to them, it's smiling and making jokes, okay? That's all networking is. It's not what ad execs do on, expense accounts, okay? There are lots of ideas of how to do it here. Go to industry parties and drink ups and blah, 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 blah. There are some LinkedIn groups. I have links on the website for you to find those. There are some mailing lists that are local especially. So the cheat code here is just that networking is easy and fun. Now, like all good things, networking has a dark side, and that's called advertising. So to me, I want to separate those. Advertising is when you switch the conversation from what are you up to? Oh my God, that's so cool, to, I actually am now doing game design contracting, so if it's when you put the message out that you're available. It's when you're talking about yourself. One thing that was a little bit non-obvious is go look at the job boards and find the job postings and try and contact them anyway and say, it's not listed as a design position, but here's my experience. I think I would do great at this. Here's something in particular that I did that was just like it. Would you consider doing this as a contract position? If you're upfront about it, I think you can use that. That's one place to find jobs. Some quotes from clients. I asked them how they find their design contractors. The first client said that they look for examples of what you have already done that is like what they need done. And the second, he just threw up his hands and he said, I've done it like 3 times and I've never been happy. So I think this points to a problem that we face as game designers. People don't know what a good game designer does versus a newer one, one who's not as good or who is not as suited to the challenge. So there is frustration on the hiring side too. And so I'm going to, again, there's some slides coming up that I hope will point you towards getting that common vision of what it is that they need done and how you're going to solve their problem. So the cheat code with respect to having that first contact with clients is that if you're going to tell them, I'm really smart, I never done a Facebook game, but I could learn it, trust me, I'm your man or woman, right? That's a really hard sell. Being able to pick up an HTML5 demo that you threw together in a weekend or something and say, well, I did that, that's one thing I did, that sells itself. They will then say, well, could you do this? It starts the conversation. So my point is, go find something to do. I highly recommend hackathons, like Startup Weekend was a huge hit for me personally, but it's also a ton of fun. A lot of game industry people will go to these hackathons. So even if you don't get something you can point to, you're gonna make a tremendous amount of connections and so on. Build your own demo. You have a website, right? Go put a little game on it. Go use one of the free JavaScript game engines and demonstrate that you can do this. If you're not a scripter or a programmer, write fiction that demonstrates your ability to write dialogue and believable characters. Whatever it is you do, the point is there are no jobs that I have seen for writing game design documents. You need to do something, okay? And it can be any of those things. It can be modeling, it can be drawing, it can be writing, and so on. But I strongly recommend that you have at least some skill that sort of demonstrates product at the other end besides a game design document. The other thing is that often the guys who write the game design documents are already employees, so they already have that itch scratched. And this one is definitely non-obvious to the point of where to find jobs. The government is getting really big into games, serious games usually, right? Education and training and things like that. voidALPHA actually is working with the government on a 3-year project, and that's allowing us to grow beyond just contracting into development and so on. So the upside is the government doesn't take equity in your company, and they're usually pretty flexible. They're looking for you to provide the solution. Of course, the downside is you need a bigger team. You got to get your engineers and your producers. And the other downside is, again, they don't know what they're looking for. So sometimes they go, well, bring me a rock. No, not that rock, you paid me to bring you a rock, The other downside, of course, is it's the government, so there's reporting and so on. What's that, and there's some red tape. That's why you need a team of a sufficient size. But so anyway, there's links on the website that will show you some ways to find those gigs. And some of them are really interesting. I've done entertainment games for a while, and they are definitely a lot of fun. I'm at a point where I like something that's got more meat to it. And so, those serious games will really bend your brain inside out. It's really a lot of fun. Okay, so now you're at the point where somebody has nibbled. You've done your networking, you've done your advertising, and somebody says, yeah, I think this will work. Let's try and figure something out. So I negotiate in 3 steps. The first step is, can I even do this? If I can't convince myself that I can do what they're asking, then obviously my job is to say, you know what, I know just the guy for you. There's this guy, Noah, who's been doing this forever. And so the cheat code to this, and we were talking about this in the lobby, is find their itch, okay? Don't listen to them when they tell you what they want. Listen to how they're going to use what they give you. That's their itch. Are they trying to get funding? Are they trying to look good to their superior? Are they trying to dig deep on the potential problems within a system or a feature? And so I call that their itch. And so when I first sit down with a client, I've got tons of notebook paper, we've got a whiteboard, and we sketch out, well, you need this and you want that. Okay, I hear you. Oh, you just said that frame rate's not important. Okay, let me just make sure, right? And you're putting in quotes exactly what they told you so that later you can refer back to it and it will guide you as you're working on this stuff. So to really drive the point home, this is a quote from a client. Again, this is somebody I worked with for like 14 months. One thing I noticed is that working with the other design contractors, that it's possible to take my directions literally, but of course, that's not what I really want. So I'm sitting there doing exactly what he tells me, and then he's, no. And that was when I understood, oh, I see. You're going to tell me the problem, but it's my job to look past that and understand what you really need done. So you're done with step one of your negotiation with the client. When you, oh, yes.
Something that I would add to that is when they're telling you what they want done, often it's good to ask them why.
Right, right. So when they tell you what they want done, ask them why they want it done at all, as well as, yeah, exactly. So that, yeah, again, you're going past the words that they're giving you and trying to understand the context in which your solution fits, because that's where the satisfaction, the customer satisfaction is going to come from. And we like to think that game design is about having all these, cool ideas and doing nothing but fun stuff, but when you're a freelancer, your real job is customer relations and customer satisfaction. They're going to hire you back if they're happy with you and the work you've done, not necessarily that it was innovative or that you came up with this entire new genre, but that you were professional and that you responded and picked up the phone. So yeah, that's a good point. Oops, excuse me. So you're done with step one of your negotiation when you have a range of estimates on all the tasks that you're going to do. You sat down with them, oh, we need a login screen, we need a main menu, we need this, and you put down next to each one in your notebook, okay, 2 to 4 hours, 1 to 8 hours, I don't know, there's a lot of risk in that one. And so you have a bunch of ranges, and you have your itch list, which is you wrote down a couple of key quotes while you were talking to understand how they're going to fit this all into their context. And then at the end you say, okay, so it sounds like what you want is a web page with da-da-da, and we're going to work on the control scheme, and really that's what you're focused on, is that right? And when they nod their head like this, you have customer buy-in at least at that top level. Step two then is, okay, I know how many hours it will take, but will they work on my schedule? So you go, well, I got that dentist appointment, and that weekend I can't work, da-da-da-da. So here's the trick. You hear time is money. Time is actually negative money, because if they're going to give you less time, you get more money. So that's always a good thing if you can swing it. So just be sensitive to that. So you're done with step two. When you have taken out your calendar and you've kind of blocked off sections and you don't think you're going to get sued, you think you're going to be able to do what they're asking in roughly the time they're asking. So of course now comes the big question, can we meet in the middle? Will we be able to arrive at a number that we're both happy with? So to do this, you've already got your range of hours that you think it will take. You've already figured out your hourly rate. And then you need to work in the fudge factors. It's a hard stop at the end. I cannot be late, so I better add like 15% padding because it's going to come out of my hide if something goes sideways on this. But they are going to let me work from home, so that's a big discount. So you add your fudge factors. And then you give them your number, and they're going to go, and they're going to give you back a number that's like 60% of that. And so you're going to close the gap by accepting other forms of payment. Either you're going to say, well, can I get my name in the credits? Can I put it on my website? Can I work from home if they didn't put that in there? Can I get payment of half of the money up front? Can you work other things out that help you out, maybe without costing them too much? And if you can't close the gap that way, again, you have your notebook with all the lumpy bits worked out, and you say, okay, so you're really firm on the price. There's 3 things here that are really very big, technically maybe, and they don't seem to really offer you that much value. So if I take these 3 out and you don't get those, well, I can do the rest of this, which is what I think you really care about for the number that you gave me, and in fact, it will be done earlier or whatever. So that's the value of having gone through the time estimates at the beginning.
You're basically saying if they won't budge on the money, work for trade.
No, I'm not saying anything that concrete. What I'm saying is that that there's going to be a phase of negotiation, and that money is not the only way to be paid. And that sometimes, and actually let me even go further than that. Sometimes the answer is, I don't think I can do that for you. What you really need is to outsource this to some company, elsewhere that's really built to do this stuff really cheap. And that goes to the point of know what you're good at and what you're selling. I've been doing this for 17 years, so I'm selling the fact that yes, my hourly rate is high, but what you get is going to make up, you're going to make it up in the long run, and that type of thing. I know what my sales pitch is, and if it's not a good match, what they really want is somebody to do this work for $20 an hour. You know what? I do know some people. Let me just hand you off. I'm not going to be involved. I'm not here to take my cut. So my point is, remember that there are things besides money that bring value to me as a contractor. Flexibility or resources, not resources, but referrals. Or, you know, I can do this part of the project for you for that amount, but I'm interested in really making a long-term relationship with you. You know, are we going to continue after this? Because, you know, maybe we can do a little bit of a deal on the first one, so on. Yes.
Well, I find also when I look at something like that, sometimes I'll be getting intangible benefits. It may be that I'll learn something. You know, this will be a chance to, you know, maybe I've never done an Android game before. They're willing to pay me to do that. So even though it's not that much money, that I can put that on my resume that I've done that. Or sometimes it's, you know, the client will, you know, be in an interesting locale and you get to fly out to some place that you've never been. So sometimes that can go into the equation. Or press, you know, sometimes like you're talking about government stuff, sometimes it can help you with your advertising, and, you know, it's worth taking a slightly lower fee if you get some good PR out of it.
Right, exactly. It's you know, what other things. Yeah, I guess the point is you have to start thinking of your value as larger than just the money in the bank. You know, you're building value in your company as game designer through things like press releases and promote, you know, so that's really what I'm getting at. Yeah, those are all good examples. Did that come through? Everybody heard that? Okay, good. Okay. Oh, congratulations, you know, you're in agreement, you shook hands. Oh, bad news. Sorry. Now the lawyers get involved. The reality is your contract's probably one of the smaller ones on their plate, and it's going to be at least a week, probably a week plus longer if it's a larger contract for them to review, and then your lawyer has to review, so it's going to take a while to go back and forth. So prepare. You got to buy your ramen in the meantime. You got to keep the heat on, so be aware that there's a delay there. And then taking that even further, a friend of mine gave me Sider's law of compensation. If you can't scratch a window with it, it ain't compensation, which seems to go against what I was just saying. The point here is that the cash flow is key when you're on your own. So really, I would say expect about 2 months from the day you sign the contract to your first dime in the bank. So that really sneaks up on you the first time you do it. Now, once you get that first one and you keep your pipeline full, you're in pretty good shape. But if you were counting on making rent because you're like, oh, I signed the contract, oh, here's my deliverable, and they go, right, we're net 45, which means we have a month and a half to pay you now. And they will use it sometimes. Another cheat code, which I didn't put on here, is ask them if they give you some of it up front. You're a pretty small fry, most likely. So if you say, well, we've got a contract for $10,000 worth of work, can you give me $5,000 on signing of the contract and the other $5,000? And a lot of companies, they're used to that. So that's really the point of this, is consider cash flow. Okay, ready, fight. So now you're working, and I have about 6 minutes. I think we're good. Now you're working with the client, and I'm going to get a little bit soapboxy here. We're game designers. I want us to lead the way on mastering the apostrophe rule. Okay? Don't speak leet to your client. Your emails should be correct. They should be capitalized, etc. And that's just, yes, okay? This is, any contractor should be doing this. The point is, you're competing with the people who are already in the office. You need to look better than them. And you need to be covering your behind, because when things go sideways, you want to point to the fact that you communicated clearly and, you know, you took their job seriously. But really, I just want us to look really good. Okay, the bad news is screw-ups are going to happen. None of my contracts have gone without at least some miscommunication. You know, things are not going to be perfect. And all are your fault. I didn't say they are all your fault, but you need to approach, when there's a problem, you need to approach the table with the point of view that part of this is due to me. So you never get to say, but you told me to ignore the frame rate. It doesn't matter, okay? The point is you're sitting down and go, okay, well, what can we do here to kind of sort this out? Usually the solution falls in one of 3 buckets. You know, first, if you're within 10 to 20% of what they want, just go back and check your itch list and say, oh, I see what he really meant. I'm still doing what he wanted. I just got to adjust it a little bit. Just do it. That's why you built in padding. If it's 10 to 20%, just go ahead and do what they need in terms of correction. Sometimes what they want is, sometimes they learned that what you're doing is not what they actually want. And so you say, okay, can I in the time we have left here, can I get you something that you can use? And again, if you've been professional and responsive throughout this, they're most likely interested in figuring that out with you. Sometimes what they want is too big to fit in the remaining contract. Again, if you've been professional and responsive and reliable, they're more than likely going to say, you know what, yeah, what we really need is a full prototype, and let's do a new contract for that. Sounds good to me, you know. How do you do this? You master the Socratic method, right? You're the contractor, you got no leverage. So, you know, when the question is, dude, you're making an arcade game and you're gonna give them infinite lives? Are you a moron? You know, that's not gonna go over really well. But the Socratic method is the whole ask questions, you know. So I'm a little confused. Was there a screen that prompts me to put in another quarter? I'm not quite sure what you have in mind there. Okay, obvious stuff, but assume that you missed something, and that's good for all contractors, I think. Finally, expect silence. They're not going to answer the phone for you. They're not going to respond to email. So expect and even enjoy silence. If they're not emailing you, you're the part of their project that's going well. They don't need to micromanage you, okay? So that's a good thing if they leave you alone. However, you're not going to just leave the line dead, because then they start to forget about you. You're going to be pushing good news into that silence. Hey, I just finished up the 2 screens we talked about. You know, I'll be finished on Friday. Can we sit down on Monday to review? You're going to be sending them the status updates. So that to me has been the way to keep the lifeline open and the heartbeat going. That just pays off huge. So that's really it. If you're a designer, come give me your card. I actually have work for some folks in the area. If you're a company, would love to keep talking some more. And again, all of the resources are online on our website, and that is it. Thank you. Ooh, in 2 minutes. Questions? Oh, yes.
What do you recommend when you're working with a company or some data stuff project and they keep saying, okay, we need you to start next week, but then something keeps hiccuping and they never want you to start? We're almost at the funding, we're almost at this, we're almost at that.
Right, so the question is, if the company keeps sounding really eager to get going and then they keep holding up and not quite getting started, after about the second time of that, I would kind of put them lower and lower on the priority list. I mean, at some point I may even hit the point of saying, you know, it sounds like you've got a few things to take care of. You know, I got to keep my family fed too. Why don't we put this on hold and I will check back with you in, say, a month. So you have to say no to something sometimes. And that is a bigger question. You know, if that's the only thing you have going, well, then you keep that line pretty darn active. But if you have other leads and, you know, things to do, you have to kind of play it by ear. But myself, I don't like being in that unknown state, so I would give them like 1 or 2 of those and then sort of say, you know what, I'm still interested, but, you know, I can't really focus on both. Let's pause this until, and then identify when you get your funding or whatever it is that's going to have them come back to you. So sort of make it crisp, I guess. One more question? Yes, last one. Are most of my clients local? Yes, except for the government, which I guess is local. Yes, all of mine, let's see, one Emeryville, in the city, and on the peninsula, yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks a lot, everybody.